Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. This time around, we're really diving deep into a book that I think a lot of you have probably heard of, Your Money or Your Life.
Yeah, a classic.
Yeah, and we talk a lot about money management and, all the things that we're supposed to be doing with our money, but this book really gets at, I think, a more foundational level of our relationship with money.
Absolutely. And that's, I think, why it's been so impactful for so many years, because it's not really just a personal finance book. It's more like a life philosophy book.
Right, exactly.
Um, and it all starts with this really interesting concept of thinking about your money as life energy.
Life energy. Okay, so like money equals energy.
Yeah. So every hour that you work,
Mm-hmm.
you're essentially trading that hour of your life for a certain amount of money, right? And so when you think about your spending decisions through that lens,
Yeah.
it really changes how you view those purchases.
So like that $5 cup of coffee I had this morning,
Exactly.
like how much of my life did I really just spend on that?
Right. Is that worth the, half hour or hour or whatever it might be of your life that you had to spend to earn that $5?
Yeah, that's a really interesting way to think about it. I've never quite thought about it that way before.
And that's one of the first sort of like aha moments I think that the book presents is like calculating what they call your real hourly wage.
Oh, real hourly wage. Okay, so there's a fake hourly wage.
Well, it's not that there's a fake one. It's just that most of us don't factor in all of the hidden costs of work.
Okay.
So, we think about our hourly wage or our salary, but we don't always think about like the cost of commuting
Oh, right, yeah.
or, work clothes or, the emotional labor of dealing with a difficult boss or coworkers.
Yeah. No,
All
totally.
of that factors into the real cost of, earning that paycheck.
So like my commute alone is an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours a day. So
Right.
that's like what, 4 hours of work just to get to work.
Exactly.
Wow. Okay, so how does that then, like, how do we even begin to wrap our minds around, like, okay, if that's my real hourly wage, then how do I look at spending differently?
Right. So when you start to really understand, like, okay, this is how much of my life energy I'm exchanging for these things, it can really make you question those impulse purchases.
Oh,
Those
yeah.
things that you buy and then you forget about the next day or,
Mhm.
don't really bring you lasting joy. It makes you really pause and say, like, is this really worth, X amount of hours of my life?
Okay, so no treasure little purchases.
Right.
They represent a lot more than we think they do.
Exactly. And so the book really encourages us to start tracking our spending.
Okay, I was gonna say, so is that where the spreadsheet comes in?
Yeah. I mean, they even say in the book, like, this part isn't always fun.
Good. I'm glad it's not just me.
It can be really uncomfortable at first,
Mm.
but it's so important to like face our spending habits head on
Okay.
because that's how we start to identify those areas where like our money isn't actually aligning with our values,
Oh.
right? It's not actually bringing us real joy.
Okay, so it's about more than just like pinching pennies and, trying to save a certain percentage of our income.
It's about like being intentional and mindful about where our money is going and why,
Okay.
and making sure that it's actually in alignment with what we care about.
Okay, so how do we do that? Because right now, spreadsheets don't sound very fun.
Right. Well, they give this great example in the book about this woman named Anne, and she thought she was like a big like going out to fancy dinners kind of person.
Okay.
Like that was her thing.
Right.
But she started tracking her spending, and she realized that those dinners were actually stressing her out.
Where you
Like the
get.
cost of them, the pressure to like get dressed up and be like fancy,
Mhm.
it just wasn't actually fun for her anymore.
So she was doing it more because she thought that that's what she should be doing or that's what she thought she liked. But then when she actually started tracking it, she's like, wait, this isn't actually bringing me joy.
Exactly. Like it was something that she thought brought her joy, but
Yeah.
deep down it was actually draining her energy.
Wow. So it sounds like this tracking process isn't just about like seeing the numbers, it's about uncovering things about ourselves maybe that we didn't even realize.
Yeah, and it was only by like actually seeing where her money was going that she was able to make that connection.
Oh, wow, that's so interesting. Okay, so what happened to Anne? Like, did she just like stop going out to eat completely or like how did she change her relationship with spending?
Well, that's where I think the book gets really empowering, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not about deprivation. It's
No.
not about like never doing the things that you enjoy. It's about like redirecting that life energy towards things that actually light you up.
Okay, so instead of saying like, no, you can't spend money on going out to eat, it's about saying like, okay, if that's not actually bringing you joy, then let's figure out what is and let's make sure that your spending aligns with that.
Exactly. It's about aligning your spending with your values. So for Anne, she realized like, I actually really enjoy like cooking at home
Okay.
and having friends over. So she ended up like, cutting back on those fancy dinners and She invested in like a really beautiful dining table and like a cookbook that she'd had her eye on.
And I bet that brought her so much more joy than like a stuffy restaurant.
Exactly.
You know what I
And it
mean?
was more in alignment with like who she really was and what she valued.
I love that. Okay, so we're talking about like aligning our spending with our values, being more mindful. But this book goes even deeper than that, right? Because it also talks about like finding work that you love.
Yes. One of the big ideas in your money or your life is aligning your earnings with your values.
Yep.
Because if you're spending, 40 hours a week or more doing something that just completely drains you, it's going to be really hard to feel financially and just personally fulfilled.
Yeah, like you're constantly trading that life energy. And if you're not getting anything back from it,
Exactly.
it's just going to lead to burnout.
Right. And I think the book even says something like, work should be energizing, not enervating.
Yeah, I love that quote.
Like you should feel energized by the work that you're doing.
Okay, but how realistic is that for most people? Like, how many people can actually say that they love their jobs?
That's a great question. And it's definitely a journey. And the book doesn't pretend that it's easy.
Right.
But, they tell this story about this woman named Sarah who was stuck in this like soul-crushing job.
Oh, Sarah.
And she was miserable, but she felt trapped by her bills.
Okay, I've been there.
She had this like golden handcuffs situation.
Yeah.
But through the process of like, reframing her relationship with money, like we talked about, seeing it as that life energy,
Okay.
she realized that she had more options than she thought.
Okay.
Like she didn't need a six-figure salary to be happy.
Right.
She needed work that aligned with her values.
Okay.
So she ended up taking a leap of faith and pursuing her passion for gardening.
Really? Okay, so she became a gardener.
Yeah, she started her own gardening business and, she makes less money now,
Okay.
but she's never been happier.
Wow.
So it's really about like what brings you joy.
Okay, so she prioritized her well-being and her fulfillment over like a bigger paycheck.
Exactly. And that's the power of aligning your work with your values.
I love that. It's so inspiring. Okay, so we've talked about aligning our spending, aligning our work with our values. What else does this book like throw at us? Because it feels like we're just scratching the surface here.
Well, you're right. There's so much more to unpack. And this next concept is a big one. It's called the crossover point.
The crossover point. Okay, that sounds intimidating a little bit.
It's actually really exciting.
Okay.
So the crossover point is that magical moment when you're earning more passive income
Oh.
from investments and such, then you need to cover your living expenses.
Wait, so you're telling me there's a point where I could potentially like tell my boss, see you later and be okay?
Exactly.
That's the crossover point.
You got it.
Like that's the dream, right?
It's like reaching financial escape velocity.
What?
And your money or your life argues this should be like everyone's goal, right? Like to reach that point of financial independence where you're not relying on like a traditional job to support yourself.
Okay, so how do we get there? Because that sounds great in theory, but like what are the actual steps?
Well, they lay out this really clear roadmap in the book. And it emphasizes like saving aggressively, investing wisely, and like living below your means, but not in a way that's like punishing yourself.
Right.
It's more about like being intentional with your spending so that you can reach that crossover point sooner.
Okay, so it's not about like, becoming a minimalist and just like never buying anything fun again. It's about really understanding like what matters to you, what you want your life to look like, and then making your financial decisions based on that.
Exactly. Like it all comes back to those values.
Okay, I'm seeing the common thread here.
Yeah. And that's where I think the book's 9-step program is really helpful.
Okay, 9 steps. We've got like 5 minutes left, so give me the highlights. What are the 9 steps?
Okay. So it starts with like making peace with your financial past.
Okay, so no dwelling on the credit card debt of your early 20s.
Exactly right. Then it's about tracking your spending, like we talked about with Anne.
Right.
And really like analyzing where your money is going and like honestly assessing, is this in alignment with my values?
Okay, did that impulse buy at the grocery store checkout really bring me lasting joy?
Right, exactly.
Okay, ow.
And then it moves into like minimizing those unnecessary expenses, finding ways to earn more while still staying true to your values.
Okay.
And then of course like putting your money to work investing so that you can reach that crossover point.
Okay, this is amazing. I have to say, like, this book, it's more than just a personal finance book. It's like a guide to designing a life that you love.
Totally. And it's about like, taking control of your finances
Yeah.
so that you can ultimately take control of your life.
Yes, and I think one of the most powerful messages of your money or your life is this idea of like questioning those societal norms around consumption.
Absolutely.
Like, it challenges us to really define what enough means for us.
Yeah. Like, what does enough look like for you?
Right, because it's so easy to get caught up in that comparison game, especially in today's world where we're constantly bombarded with messages of like, you need more, you need to buy this, you need to have that.
And the book really encourages us to like step back from that and say like, what is actually important to me?
Right. What brings me joy, what makes me feel fulfilled, and then making sure that our financial decisions are supporting that.
Exactly. It's not about the size of your bank account. It's about like the freedom and the fulfillment in your life.
I love that so much. So if someone is listening to this and they're like, okay, I'm ready to rethink my relationship with money, what's like the one thing you want them to take away from our deep dive today?
I want them to remember that this is about more than just personal finance. It's about personal transformation.
Ooh, I like that.
And it's about being more conscious of how you interact with money so that you can make choices that are going to bring you closer to like the life that you truly desire.
That's such a good reminder that like we have the power to design our lives and our finances should support that vision, not hold us back. Awesome. Well, this has been so eye-opening. I feel like I have a whole new perspective on my finances, and I am so excited to go back and reread Your Money or Your Life with fresh eyes.
It's a great one to revisit.
It is. And to everyone listening, we hope you enjoyed this deep dive as much as we did, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive into something amazing.
Sound good.
Bye, everyone.